Page 7, parts of a cell. Cells come in many shapes and sizes. Cells have many different functions, but all cells have the following parts in common: the cell membrane and cytoplasm. All cells are surrounded by a cell membrane. The cell membrane is a protective layer that covers the cell's surface and acts as a barrier. It separates the cell's contents from its environment. The cell membrane also controls materials going into and out of the cell. Inside the cell is a fluid. This fluid and almost all of its contents are called the cytoplasm. Organelles. Cells have organelles that carry out various life processes. Organelles are structures that perform specific functions within the cell. Different types of cells have different organelles. Most organelles are surrounded by membranes. For example, the algal cell in Figure 4 has membrane-bound organelles. Some organelles float in the cytoplasm. Other organelles are attached to membranes or other organelles. Genetic material. All cells contain DNA at some point in their life. DNA is the genetic material that carries information needed to make new cells and new organisms. DNA is passed on from parent cells to new cells and controls the activities of a cell. Figure 5 shows the DNA of a bacterium. In some cells, the DNA is enclosed inside an organelle called the nucleus. For example, your cells have a nucleus. In contrast, bacterial cells do not have a nucleus. The nucleus is basically the control center of the cell. In humans, mature red blood cells lose their DNA. Red blood cells are made inside bones. When red blood cells are first made, they have a nucleus with the DNA. But before they enter the bloodstream, red blood cells lose their nucleus and DNA. They survive with no new instructions from their DNA. Page 8, 2 kinds of cells. All cells have cell membranes, organelles, cytoplasm, and DNA. But there are 2 types of basic cells: cells without a nucleus and cells with a nucleus. Cells with no nucleus are prokaryotic cells. Cells that have a nucleus are eukaryotic cells. Prokaryotic cells are further classified into 2 groups: bacteria and archaea. Prokaryotes, bacteria, and archaea. Bacteria and archaea are prokaryotes. Prokaryotes are single-celled organisms that do not have a nucleus or membrane-bound organelles. Bacteria. The most common prokaryotes are bacteria. Bacteria are the smallest cells known. These tiny organisms live almost anywhere. Bacteria do not have a nucleus, but they do have DNA. A bacteria's DNA is a long circular molecule shaped like a twisted rubber band. Bacteria have no membrane-covered organelles, but they do have ribosomes. Ribosomes are tiny, round organelles made of protein and other material. Bacteria also have a strong, web-like exterior cell wall. This wall helps the cell retain its shape. A bacterium's cell membrane is just inside the cell wall. Together, the cell wall and cell membrane allow material into and out of the cell. Some bacteria live in the soil and water. Others live in or on other organisms. For example, you have bacteria living on your skin and teeth. You also have bacteria living in your digestive system. These bacteria help in the process of digestion. A typical bacterial cell is shown in Figure 6. Page 9. The second kind of prokaryote are the archaea, singular archaeon. Archaea are similar to bacteria in some ways. For example, both are single-celled organisms. Both have ribosomes, a cell membrane, and circular DNA. And both lack a nucleus and membrane-bound organelles. But archaea differ from bacteria in some way too. For example, archaeal ribosomes are different from bacterial ribosomes. Archaea are similar to eukaryotic cells in some ways too. For example, archaeal ribosomes are more like ribosomes of eukaryotic cells. But archaea also have some features that no other cells have. For example, the cell wall and cell membranes of archaea are different from the cell walls of other organisms. And some archaea live in places where no other organisms could live. 3 types of archaea are heat-loving, salt-loving, and methane-making. Methane is a kind of gas frequently found in swamps. Heat-loving and salt-loving archaea are sometimes called extremophiles. Extremophiles live in places where conditions are extreme. They live in very hot water, such as in hot springs, or where the water is extremely salty. Figure 7 shows one kind of methane-making archaea that lives deep in the ocean near volcanic vents. The temperature of the water from those vents is extreme. It is above the boiling point of water at sea level.